Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Wizard World Virtual Experiences as the crowd applauds wildly from their homes. Let's feel the love from around the world. We can't hear your applause, but make some noise wherever you are watching from. We are streaming to you completely free and completely live on Facebook, Twitch, and where else? YouTube. Bringing these free panels to you to the comfort and safety of your home. Thanks once again for joining us at Wizard World Virtual Experiences. Show us your love in the comments by tagging at Wizard World Virtual or at Wizard World with your questions for this amazing cast of Versailles coming out in a bit. You can also just show your love with any emoji of your choice. Hearts, thumbs up, random faces you choose. We are excited to bring out this amazing cast in just a few minutes. But before we get there, as I mentioned, we are streaming free to you. But if you're able to during these tough times, we have some amazing paid virtual experiences that you can participate in as well. If you have a specific question for one of these amazing actors coming up, head to wizardworldvirtual.com. Again, that is wizardworldvirtual.com, where you can purchase live one-on-one video chats, autographs, and video recorded messages. Those live one-on-one video chats, which are a once-in-a-lifetime experience, will be happening via Zoom immediately following this call, this panel. So make sure you take advantage of those within the next hour. Autographs and video recorded messages will be available for 3 days out from now. So continue to participate in that. If you're looking for signed memorabilia, works of art from our amazing artists and vendors from past virtual experiences or past physical conventions, please head to the Wizard World Vault. It's our online convention hall. It's wizardworldvault.com, where you can find out more information about that. But without further ado, I recently just binged this series on Netflix. You can as well. If you love historical fiction and you love the time of King Louis XIV, I'm a nerd about that moment in history. What an amazing show. What a beautiful show production-wise. And we're about to find a little bit more about that from three of the amazing actors that portrayed three of the many women in Louis's life. Let's bring them to the virtual stage right now. First up, the Queen of France, the original Queen of France, Maria Therese. Please give it up for Elisa Lasowski.
Hi.
Hello, Elisa. How are you? Thank you for being here.
Good, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Of course, of course. Next up, his original mistress that we know of historically, the Madame de Montespan. Please give it up for Anna Brewster.
Hi.
Hello, Anna. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, the second wife of Prince Felipe, a princess in her own right, Princess Palatine Elizabeth Charlotte. Let's hear it for Jessica Clark.
Hey!
Hey, how's it going, Jessica? Good to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. What an interesting series. Obviously, it started in Europe in Canal Plus and then on BBC. And then we had it like kind of over here in America on the movie channel. It was like one of more obscure networks. And now it's been on Netflix for the past couple of years. And I know, at least from our perspective, it's been just like gaining in popularity and fame as new folks discover it. And, you know, I mentioned in the little briefing beforehand how much of a nerd I am about this time in history and this period of history. I remember going as a teenager to France and going to Versailles and just being in awe at this crazy building and creation and palace that this man created and all the people that live there. I just wonder, what was your experience just with the history of King Louis XIV before coming onto the series, your personal knowledge of it, and then what it was like arriving for the first day on that set? I know the series used a bunch of different, castles in France, but specifically coming to Versailles, what was that like, that first day being in that amazing location?
Starting.
Yeah, this is always the fun part where, yeah.
I mean, the locations were amazing. It's I remember my first day being quite intimidated actually at how kind of grandiose it is, and so it adds, you've got the big costumes and then the big spaces, and then it adds to the whole theater of it, and then it adds to the nervousness you get before you start to shoot, am I answering your question? The history of it,
yeah, of course.
The history of it, I mean, kind of, I think when you, in any of these type of acting projects in general, you might know about a subject, but then you end up knowing about it in more details. You start to look into it. Yeah, it's like very rich, fascinating time. We learned a lot. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, Jess and I, we went to school in England, so we very much learn about English history, not so much about French. So we kind of we really had to dive into it, it's fascinating. And yeah, I mean, it's the same. I think I didn't realize the scale of the production, I don't think, until I got onto set for the first day, and then like, okay, this is what's happening. And then yeah, it just kept on getting bigger and bigger. And I don't think I actually shot in Versailles until season 2, towards the end. So yeah, that was really surreal, just kind of walking down the corridors in full costume. And yeah, so Jess.
Yeah, I mean, same as Anna. I don't think we were taught anything about French history at school. I remember learning about China, but not France. So it was really exciting to delve into a history that I felt like I probably should know more about than I did. And like reading letters and just being able to like really like dig deep into that part of history. When I started in season 2, I started in the studio, which obviously is also completely incredible. And you were like, they've built this? I could just live here. But I remember the first day I went to Versailles was my Palatine first arrival at Versailles. And I arrived in this like outrageous outfit on a horse-drawn carriage through the gates. And I was like, is this real? So kind of there was an amazing sort of art imitating life vibe of Jess being like, oh my gosh. And imagine Palatine being like, wow, this is quite a palace.
Yeah, I mean, what an interesting time of history where all of the European countries were really crossing over, you know, and cousins were marrying cousins, but it was all about those alliances between the different countries. Elisa, you're French originally, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about these? How do you feel about these Brits knowing nothing about your history here right now?
No, it's not like that. I kind of think like we you know, I guess we want to claim our history as our own, but like you just said, I mean, you know, they were all mixed, really.
Of
like
course,
countries were aligned, you know. So like the concept that a history is yours and not somebody else's, I find like really untrue. So really and truly, it's European history that mixed up, and all the kingdoms marrying into each other and all of that. So no, there was definitely no sense of going like, you know, who are these showrunners that are not French coming in to do a show about this? Some people reacted like that in the French press to begin with. It sort of felt like, hey, wait a minute, it's our history. Who are you to tell it? But to be honest, I think, yeah, these are like false concepts that are very, you know, untrue and nationalistic and really shouldn't be. So I think it's cool. It also is like people sort of, you know, have a different interpretation of some of what, you know, you might have learned in your own country. And so it's refreshing, actually. Yeah.
I agree. That was very beautifully said. I agree 100%. Especially in these times, you know, it's amazing how history repeats itself, you know, and everything kind of comes around in cycles. And Louis XIV is such an interesting example because he did so much good for the country of France in terms of uniting it. But then there's so much, you know, story that we don't know really 100%, you know what I mean? But this series really fleshed out in terms of how he went about it and who his alliances were with and who he was trusting. And congratulations on just all three of y'all's and all of the women of the series' beautiful work. The women were such an influential part. You know, Louis gets up there, you know, and he gets historically referenced, but my gosh, the amount of women that he relied on throughout his career, you know, and the influence and everyone he listened to, they were really who shaped the country at the time. Which was so cool just to see the series portray a good amount of them, you know, starting with Maria and then bringing in all the different, you know, women again that influenced them. But I'd like to sort of reference a little bit what you were saying, Elisa, and this is a question. We're going to get to some fan questions, and there's already a lot of fan questions coming through, specifically from Bonnie Toot, watching on Facebook, would like to know how much of a spin because we talked about there's a lot of historical things we know, but this is obviously historical fiction, you know, and it's one writer, or not, a group of writers' interpretation of what they think happened within the walls, you know, of Versailles. How much of a spin did you feel like you put on your characters, or was there encouragement to kind of take it in your own direction, or was there a lot more put into the historical versions of these folks? And this might be a difficult or tricky question, but I guess I'm just curious about, yeah, how much of that spin were you aware of, or, you know, how did you take the character from history to this sort of fictional version?
I guess we are making a TV show, aren't we?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a script. It's made for TV. There's a lot of drama. It's also, you know, we're talking about a period where the documentation of what was going on at that time, there isn't that much. So as far as like character, you can really develop it, and you can put your own spin on it, because
Sure.
you get little snippets. And I read a couple of books about Montespan and about her story. That really gives you like a structure, and then you can kind of fill in the gaps, which I think is great. And, you know, historically, for me personally, Montespan had a really bad rep. Well, no, sorry, she had a bad rep, but then for me, that allowed me to kind of look at her as a woman who had she had 9 children, but she had 7 by Louis.
Wow.
And then try and think, well, you know what, at the same time, she was a mother, she was in the court. Like, how can you kind of give her a bit more heart? So that, you know, this stuff isn't written down, but I don't know, as an intelligent person, you kind of try to fill in the gaps, and I don't know, you're also telling a story. So
yeah, of course, it's awesome.
Yeah, I felt like I was really lucky in that Palatine, her letters, they're in a book, and so I could read them all, which was amazing, to get a real sense of her character and what she was like and her wit. But at the same time, it's always going to be you bringing an element of you to the part that you play, and there has to be kind of like a nod to. I sort of felt like I wanted to do her proud, by kind of giving her like a bit of a kind of salute to her, but also bring a, you know, an element of me to it as well. And the writers were really great. They were very. It wasn't sort of strict. There was like very flexible, very willing to kind of talk about. You know, so if I had sort of thoughts about, well, actually, she said this in one of her letters, and it was really juicy. What do we think about bringing it in, or kind of nodding to that element of her? They were, you know, really kind of up for that sort of discussion, which was great. But yeah, I mean, the thing I found really interesting about it is that so much of the series feels sort of like outrageous, and like that couldn't have possibly happened. Yeah. But actually, the most of it happened and more. I remember like being on set and hearing these like ridiculous stories about him having a sort of zoo, in just having all these wild animals walking around. I was like, that can't be true. Like, no, that was true. So I think, yeah, there was a sort of element of feeling like the series made it completely like drama, but actually a lot of it was history.
Yeah, and a lot of it is probably quite tame. It's funny, I remember coming across some like history books I read as well, that Louis XIV loved like eating. And he loved like throwing food in like his mistress's faces when he and I was like, wow, this is really wild. So none of these things were in our script, you know, but they could have been. So yeah, I mean, you know what? It's always an interpretation anyway, right? Like history books were written by people who interpreted what they saw, and then people picked up and kept writing. And so yeah, it's always storytelling is always an interpretation of some sort, you know, so that's what we did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially during that time. And Palatine, like you said, she probably had the most amount of detail that was the closest to the king, but that was after, you know, all the first, you know, sort of storylines with his first, you know, women in his life. So that, you know, it's interesting to see that, but yeah, tough to play it before. We talked a little bit about the costume. The production design on the show is beautiful. I think it's the best part of the show. It really just brings the world to life. And not only historically, but then we talked about a little bit, there's that sort of modern sensibility of absurdism that was brought with like some modern music. M83's soundtrack, you know, that opening song really takes you into that world of like the mind. You almost get into the mind of Louis, you know what I mean? How he was what his feelings were for art, and he gave to the art so much. And the costumes and his idea of fashion is such a huge moment of that time. Your costumes are all beautiful. I mean, my gosh. And the fans want to know, specifically Bonnie again, but then also, and I'm going to butcher this, and I apologize if you're watching out there on Twitter, but Aga Sutstakowska, I think is the pronunciation. Let's talk about the costumes. How was it getting in those costumes every day? Are there any of your favorite or worst costumes that you had to get into? Tell us a little bit about the process of the beautiful work that was done costuming-wise on the show.
Jessica, go.
So I remember turning up pre-shoot to sort of meet everyone and get measured up and get fitted, and everything, all of the costumes were made like specifically for you. Yeah. The artistry was unbelievable. We talked about this before, me and Anna, but the color palette, all the different characters had their own specific color palette. And the team, the incredible costume makers and designers that worked on this show, it's just like, it was unbelievable, the skill and talent. And I remember like second season, but first season, I remember just being like, oh, this is just the best, like just loving every moment. And then like third season being like, oh, it's quite tough to just go to the loo, isn't it? Or like, this very hot, very like difficult to wear. And I just remember being really grateful that we didn't have to wear them anymore. But they're so beautiful. My riding outfit was the one that I particularly wanted to wear all the time. It made me feel really powerful.
Yeah. And that one was a little more practical too, less courtly, a little more, good rough and tumbly for what that is. I mean, still extensive, obviously, but a little bit more casual. Ladies of the court, other favorite or worst costumes?
I mean, like you said, it's true. Like there was a lot of emphasis in the show about, the visuals. They got one of France's best costume designer. They got one of France's best like set designer. Yeah. All like top people. But it did sort of feel like sometimes, with all due respect to our production, it did sometimes feel like acting came, like we came last. It was like, okay, first we do you all up, it's taking hours, and then you get one take, okay, done, and you're like, wait, I just spent like 5 hours getting ready. Give me at least 2 takes. Sometimes when things were rushed, it felt a little bit like that, but it does look, it's incredible. I hated my wig because it was way too heavy, but it looks stunning.
Yeah, we had a studio. There was a whole section where they were just continuously making costumes through the whole show. And I think it was a really great team. So I'd always pop down there and have a little chat and get refitted. And the corsets, I remember whenever we got a new dress, it was always really tight. Do you remember? And then like it would slowly loosen up and you get more comfortable. But no, we also shot the show during like every possible season. So I remember one point at the height of summer, we were in a church and it was so hot. And I remember me and Elisa, there was the 3 of us. I think we all just like hitched our skirts up and sat on the marble floor because it was really cold. Best thing at a church, but I can't think what my favorite costume was. I really like my color palette because I used to have brown hair, but it was all like greens and browns and like really rich fabrics. But yeah, the Madeline was amazing.
Yeah,
that's interesting about the color palettes. What's so cool about the design is you're supposed to notice it, but then not notice it at the same time, right? And color palettes are always a big part of that. Were there specific things character-wise that the colors were looking to accentuate? Like, was your color about your character, or like where they were from culturally? Do you know like kind of the story behind that? Because it's such an interesting little detail.
I mean, for me, no, I think mine was more just about the tones that went with my skin. But I know that there was like definitely progression about the shapes of the dresses through the series. Season 2, I think the dresses became a lot more like they went out on the hips as opposed to, or was it on the back? I can't remember. But basically the shapes just slightly changed from season to season. And I'm sure if you now rewatched it, you'd notice. But I can't think of anything character specific color wise that was for mine.
I mean, I know I had a lot of reds, and I don't know, if it was hinting at the regal thing or Spain or they were, but like Anna says, I think it's true that Madeline really worked with our skin color, and Anna has green in her eyes, Jessica has blue in her eyes, and you had a lot of blue dresses, and so there was also a lot of she really worked with our coloring, which is why I guess the costume also looked so good on everyone, because it's sort of, she's like an amazing creator. Yeah.
That's so cool. The makeup, everyone looks beautiful on the show, and rightly so, because I think of the times that was something that people put a lot of emphasis into. But the amount of close-ups and the makeup work that was done with the wigs, and accentuating everyone's eyes, I noticed really stand and pop in this show. There's a lot of just really close-up on the eyes and what people are thinking. So really cool stuff. That's a shout out to Lady Lizzie, who asked a lot about costumes. Also, Barbara Lott is curious if you took any, or were you allowed to take any of your costumes from the set after the show wrapped. This is always a touchy subject.
I'm just laughing because I've had this with Jessica before, and she pulled out this piece that she'd taken, and I was like, what?
I have two. I have my green. But I called you up, Anna, and I told you, because they said we're allowed to keep one or two.
I know, but because I finished earlier, I think I missed out. That's it.
It's not too late. They must be somewhere.
Track them down.
So Lisa's got two. Anna, you missed out, it seems like. And Jessica, you have one that you or a piece of something?
Yeah, I got my riding jacket. Which I'm just still trying to work out the appropriate occasion to wear it out for. I mean, not leaving the house at the moment. I can just wear it around the house regally. Just drinking wine, wearing a riding jacket.
We need fancy dress parties back. We need to get back to where we can have some parties and things like that. We're about halfway through the panel. I just want to shout out to all the fans out there. Keep those questions coming in. We've got a few more lined up. Just know too that the one-on-one video chats, if you'd like to purchase those, will be available throughout the hour here. So those will happen today, immediately following panel. So take advantage of those if you are interested. We talked a little bit about the history, about the storylines and things. Obviously, Elisa and Anna, you played some women who had some tragic, we won't spoil it for everybody because I think fans are still watching it, but had some ups and downs and some tragedy, some positive moments as well. Jessica, I think you made it out on top as I'm gonna spoil a little bit and say she was doing okay at the end, Palatine, so far, in terms of, she's got her problems, but not as serious as the queen and the first mistress. But for all three of you, I'm just curious, Bika Boo 808 who's watching on Twitch, we're just wondering what your favorite or most memorable scenes were to shoot, or and along those same lines, for my questioning, maybe moments or character arcs or stories that were your most favorite or memorable from the series.
I had so many pinch me moments on the show, and they normally came at midnight when we'd be doing a night shoot. And I remember a few occasions where we'd be in this grand house and they'd have the lawn all lit up with candles, and you'd think that they were those electric candles, but they're proper candles, and you have people running on to relight them, and it's just and you're just pinching yourself this is real. But no, I mean, for me, the favorite scenes were always the group ones, and always on a night shoot, because you all go a bit delirious and you're all there together just trying to get through. But the cast, we all got on so well, and we were so, I don't know, we were all at a similar point in our careers, and no egos, and it was just a really nice camaraderie. And it felt like a special time to be around each other, and I don't know, it was very exciting.
Yeah, I feel it was a bit boring, but I feel the same. It was totally those big court group scenes, and you'd been working for hours, and then someone like Joe Sheridan would crack a joke and you'd laugh until you cried, or Pip Torrens would make a joke and you'd laugh until you cried, and you're all a bit delirious, but it was just such a lovely group. I do remember we were in a church. We were in the church of, sitting with your bare bum on the floor, that church. Sorry. And we were all so, I can't remember, we'd been filming for hours and we were all really exhausted and we were all like, basically like desperate for lunch. And George was like, can we just do one more? And we were like, yep, George, that's fine. Because actually George is really delightful, really professional, works really hard. Of course he could have one more take. So we were like, okay, great, yeah, sure. And then the music starts over the sort of, I don't know, some kind of tannoy system. And he just starts dancing down the church aisle. And we were like, ah! And everyone started dancing, crew, actors, everyone. And it was just like such a high. It was such a like really beautiful moment for everyone to kind of go a bit wild whilst wearing corsets.
Awesome. Lisa, favorite memorable moments on set?
I mean, yeah, there were so many. And indeed, like, you know, because this set's like everything about the show is definitely like quite spectacular. So all those big scenes where there were a lot of things happening were always just really like, wow, you know. I think more if I was to answer it in a more like character specific way, or, you know, more actual scenes or whatever. I guess because my character is quite stern throughout, so I actually quite enjoy the scenes where she's either a bit more mean, or obviously the ones at the end where she goes crazy, or and then I felt like I could let go a little bit, which for me was definitely fun. If there's a memorable moment I have, it's actually, this is the weirdest thing I've ever experienced, I think, on a film set. But at the very end, when the queen passes away, and we do this scene where there's violins playing and everyone comes and walks in front of the bed to pay their respect. While we were setting up that scene, before I had my eyes closed, I was just lying down on this bed before the action and just looking at everyone walking. It's like the closest thing I've ever experienced to attending your own funeral.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
This is insane. And it stayed in my head as such a strong image. Just so my like little feet stick out and then just see all these people walk. It's just very bizarre, yeah. But you know, filmmaking is full of these, like we get loaded with like amazing experiences and imagery of what you put yourself through by telling a story, you know. But yeah, Versailles was like particularly spectacular just because it's so, yeah, so much, well, so many things going on all the time. Yeah. So anyway, that's for me.
No, that's amazing. What an interesting story to hear about portraying a character in a funeral and then sort of kind of having that meta reflection, you know what I mean, on being at your own. Oh my gosh, interesting. This is a similar question, and maybe we answered it a little bit. And I know throughout even with the three of you, we're part of the early seasons, middle seasons, later seasons. But Aaron Glover is curious if you, not only for your character, but just if you have a favorite season of the show in general out of the three. What it amazing, so much was covered in 3 seasons, and I recommend anyone who's watching now that hasn't seen it. It's on Netflix. Go and binge it. It's a beautiful show. Again, especially if you're a nerd into history. But I'm wondering from you 3 ladies, if you have a particular season or like arc from a season that was your favorite going back to.
Not particularly for me, I think. No season in particular. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. There was, everyone had their arcs and they kind of went, took their time. Anything from Anna or Jess?
I guess mine was season 2 for me was like where I really got to kind of do some work. Yeah. You kind of go from being a background to kind of like, okay, got a lot to do now. So I had a lot of fun with that. And I had a bit of a kind of build up, which is quite nice because I got to get to know everyone and get to know the character in season 1, and then kind of could really immerse myself into her in season 2. So yeah, I think season 2 for me, it had some challenges. It was really hard, but no, I feel like that was fun.
I'd probably say season 1 because I didn't have to look at this stupid mug when I watched it. But I do also have a very, very big soft spot for season 2, just because it was so great coming into the show. I was so nervous that everyone would be like, "Who's this new chick? We're already a fun gang. We don't need you." and everyone was so great and so like welcoming and warm and wonderful, and I had just the best time. So I definitely have a soft spot for season 2.
What a that's another amazing part of the series. I mean, obviously Louis is the main character, and we're seeing most of it through his lives, but all of the people that he interacts with, you know, come in and out throughout. And so there is that, Anna, you mentioned a little bit, there is that kind of ebb and flow of each one of these folks that are there, they're part of the court, and then they have their moment of, you know, their influence on history and their lives. And everyone did such a cool job, an amazing job just coming in and out. You're 3 of them, obviously, but just kudos to the whole cast. Just an amazing cast of actors, you know, that really brought their characters to life. Everything from, again, the nobles all the way down to just, you know, the regular townspeople and such like that. So it is an epic series for sure. This is we spoke a little bit about seasons and memories. This is another question from Aga Sutsakowska. If you could place, so a lot of people living, this is my segue, in Versailles at the time, if you could pick a character that would be your favorite roommate or favorite person to hang out with in Versailles, character-wise, who would you personally, Lisa, Jessica, and Anna, want to hang out with? And it might be similar people that you acted with on set, obviously. But is there someone who sticks out that's like, I feel like this person would be fun to be roommates with or hang out with in Versailles?
I think maybe mine would be Chevalier. He was always causing trouble. Yeah. I'm quite into it. I feel like you'd have a lot of fun.
It's true. Let's all hang out with Chevalier. Let's all be roommates with Chevalier.
Yeah.
He's probably the most fun, like always up to no good. Like, yeah. I mean, it's like a palace of pleasure, right? So I guess it was meant to be all for fun. So why not Chevalier? Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, let's all party with Chevalier. That'd be some wild parties. That'd be quite exhausting.
It's quite.
You probably wouldn't get to sleep.
It's quite hard. No.
What?
It's quite hard to like just because the people are so different to the characters, and like I get so confused because I've had so much downtime with like Evan who plays Chevalier, and it's like, oh, am I thinking about Ev? Because like on a personal level, like I would have hung out with all of them, like Pip and Joe, and yeah, I mean especially some of the older cast. They are so funny and so wonderful and so nice, and I think that's what was so special about the cast is you just had such varying ages, but there was just such unity between us.
Chevalier for the win. I think he would throw the best parties for sure. And he would be the most open, I think, too, to just anyone, whoever wants to come through. You know what I mean? It's an open door policy with Chevalier, I think. So many different intrigues and things going on with him. What? How about, well, you mentioned a little bit, Anna, so everybody in terms of the cast, but in terms of favorites from the cast, I know this is hard putting you on the spot, but it seems like already just from your all's interactions with each other in this virtual setting, that the cast was super tight and super together as well. Any particular funny, who's like the funniest on set, I guess, is always the question that comes through from the fans, or the one that jokes around or has the kind of creates that air of fun on set the most. Might be yourself.
I don't know. Like my instinct with that would be to answer because we do get these type of questions often. But
sure,
I do think it depends on like people's different approaches to work, right? But I kind of think, like Anna just said, it's like sometimes you kind of get mixed up. There's the character, there's the person. But you tend to embody, even if you're not a method actor or whatever, you do tend to embody the vibe of the character that you play on set because that goes along with the concentration that you have before the action or whatever. So it doesn't mean that you can't kind of like let go but all my experiences of filming in general, Versailles and other, is that you kind of get a little bit confused about who the person is. And like, so I don't know how to answer that question. Like you can answer like who is the funniest outside of set, but on set, I don't know. I don't know.
No, that's a great answer. I mean, and that's what's interesting to hear how different actors perceive it. But then from our perspective outside of it as fans, like what we're thinking is going on. You know what I mean? So there's no wrong answer. I think that's a cool take on it for sure.
And I'm now like, I mean, for me, yeah, Pip Torrens and Joe Sheridan, like, I don't know if I've laughed as much as that on a set as I have with them. Like very, very, very funny men in very different ways, actually. But also very generous with it and very kind with it, and kind of amazing ability to like crack a joke or be holding court, and then the scene to start and it be almost like, oh, where did they go? We were just joking around. Like, oh, now we're serious? Oh, sorry. That they were, yeah, really good fun to have on a set. But then everyone was great. Everyone was like, it was a lovely little family.
So Elisa, while you were doing your great job as an actor, trying to prepare for the next scene, everyone else was fooling around behind your back, is what we're saying.
Busted.
Everyone was working hard. No, that's
no. I mean, well, like we said, everyone brings their own quality, you know what I mean, to their performance, and I think that's what makes for amazing casts and amazing shows. And that was the cool part of watching this show. I want to talk. We've got like 4 minutes left, so I want to end on this. It's been such an interest as a fan, but then also as a host moderator. It was such an interesting job I had to researching the show, because again, it had released in Europe, and then for whatever reason, again, it just took a little while to get here and have prominence. But now that it's been on Netflix, again, there is that buzz kind of coming back around. I know the showrunners have said, no, we finished our storyline, like we told the story we wanted to tell. But I know there was always kind of rumblings and talks of future seasons of Versailles, and the fans have been there. There's petitions out there to like have spin-offs and season 4s. I don't know, like, what are your reflections on the end of the show and any future potentially that you see for it, or not at all? And maybe just a reflection on the cool little fan buzz that has been created. It's become almost like a cult favorite of a lot of folks out there. I know that was, again, a loaded question with many parts, but sort of just your reflection on the fans and ultimately how, if you've heard anything or you'd be interested in this show continuing or the storylines continuing.
I think firstly, the fans of the show are incredible. They have really they're called the Versailles family, and they put so much support behind each and every one of the cast, and they're so wonderful. So yeah, we kind of have to say thank you to them for even creating that buzz. But no, I've been asked this before, whether I'd like to go back. I mean, by fans, whether I'd like to go back and do another season. And I feel like now enough time has passed. Like it was an exhausting process, and after 3 seasons of hair, makeup, costume, like it was tiring.
Sure.
But I would now not mind going back and seeing everyone again and going back to like my Versailles family. And, we shot in Paris for 7 months of the year. Who'd say no?
Yeah.
I think the idea of the show being called Versailles as well was that they could potentially keep going with different seasons, but jump, a few generations ahead, or go on to the story of Louis XVI or the French Revolution, or, present day Versailles with the tourist buses. Like, I don't know. But, like, well, the show is called Versailles, so potentially it could go on. My understanding was that maybe they had come to the end of the storylines with Louis XIV's era kind of thing, and so, but I suppose it could, it's like they have the business model, they could keep going. Like, I personally, haven't heard of anything right now, but yeah, and like Anna says, thank you to the fan for like pushing for it, because it would be cool, yeah, for sure. I just don't know if it would be Louis XIV, but yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Anna's totally right. Like, the fans are unbelievable. The support both of the show, but also kind of all of us outside of that. Like, I've had fans come and see me in theatre shows, and it's always just so nice to see like their lovely faces. So that's kind of incredible, and to kind of have that I don't know, force behind it, but also like family behind the family is just so lovely. And I felt like when we finished season 3, it was like, okay, it's time. We're all a bit sad that it's come to an end, but maybe everything has to come to an end. And now, like a few years on, I'm like, should we just do another one? But yeah, I think Elisa maybe is right, and it needs to be Versailles, but the next generation. But then I was thinking, oh, maybe they could do a what's that show called American Horror Story, which I love, and they could just like all of us, but playing different characters, but from the next generation. And I was like, so maybe they'll do an American Horror Story.
Elisa, did you say who did she want to play?
Yeah. Who would you want to play?
Yeah.
If you're doing Louis the 14th, if you're doing Louis the 15th or Louis the 16th.
We need a Marie Antoinette.
Obviously, I want to be king. None of this patriarchal stuff. Come on. We could do some gender swapping. Why not?
Yeah. There's been some fun, oh my gosh, what is that movie with Marie Antoinette? I can't remember it off the top of my head, but where they play up that more that side of things, which is such a cool story. I love that. My gosh, I know the fans would totally dig that, because Versailles itself, Lisa, to your point, is a character and has continued to be a character in history and throughout different generations. It would be super trippy and interesting if they came to the modern day. That would be so wild to sort of see the evolution of it. But hey, it's once we get back to normal and shooting things, it could happen for sure. But I know I speak on behalf of all the fans when I say thank you three for giving us three beautiful, amazing seasons and your beautiful work as these awesome women from history. Thank you so much for being here. A loud round of applause. Let them hear you. Let them feel the reverberations from around the globe, everybody. One more time for the cast of Versailles. It's on Netflix. Go watch it. 3 seasons. We got nothing else to do right now, so go binge it. One more time for Jessica Clark, Anna Brewster, and Elisa Lasowski. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here. They're going to be heading out of this specific Zoom call. So say goodbye one more time. Bye, everybody. I'll be sticking around here for just a little while to let you know about all the amazing opportunities you can take part in. As I mentioned, we'll be doing those live one-on-one video chats. They'll be on sale for the next 15, 20 minutes or so until the top of the next hour. We're going to give our amazing actors a little break, and then they'll be joining their Zoom links. So if you'd like to purchase those one-on-one video chats, definitely take advantage of that. In addition to those, there will be autographs and video recorded messages on sale for the next week. So head to wizardworldvirtual.com. Again, that's wizardworldvirtual.com to check that out. If you're watching this later on, again, remember, those things are still on sale. Also, if you're watching this a little bit later, not live, don't forget to check out the Wizard World Vault. We place all of our autographs and signed memorabilia and works of art from our amazing artists and vendors on the Wizard World Vault. That is wizardworldvault.com. Please continue to follow us. We are at Wizard World on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm at Mike G Does Things. If you want to follow all my silly random hosting gigs and ask questions for the amazing cast coming up, definitely follow me and tag me in all of your posts. Speaking of amazing casts coming up, this Wednesday, we have a panel with the cast of Vampire Diaries. Thursday, we have a panel with the cast of Teen Wolf. Friday, we have a panel with the cast of Perfect Strangers and Pretty Little Liars. And then coming up on June 6th is the cast of Marvel's Runaways. We have a lot more exciting announcements coming up over the next week, so continue to check us out online. Even when physical conventions come back, we're going to continue to do these fun virtual panels because we are reaching folks around the world that might not be able to get to those conventions, but we're so excited to see you again in person. Shout out to @VersaillesFam on Twitter again for promoting us and tweeting that this was happening today. What a cool experience. On behalf of Wizard World Virtual Experiences, I've been your host, Mike G. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.